It was rejected, in fact, in India, because we do not agree to the formulation that India is a xenophobic country. We are civilizationally not xenophobic, and we are welcoming all cultures, all pluralistic ideas, and we have a culture of debate and acceptance. So that's absolutely off the mark. But I think the point is deeper, because I think what the Americans' worldview is that of a unipolar world, that they are at the center of the universe, right? And this was reinforced after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 and intellectualized by Fukuyama's idea, end of history, that this is the end. The Western world has triumphed and the unipolar world has begun. That era has begun permanently. Now, that's the mindset from which they come. What has happened in between is that the world has become from unipolar to multipolar. You have new civilizational states which are on the rise. China, its rise is visible, both in terms of geo-economic power and geopolitical heft. It can be seen. You have a rising Russia, a civilizational state, and India is on the rise. And we are the fastest growing economy in the world. So power has diffused, but the Americans and the West generally are unable to reconcile with new realities. So in order to force their worldview, they see India, in this case, Japan, and one more, Russia, probably, as the other. You have to other it because you have not moved from your flawed, unrealistic position that the world is unipolar and America is the center of it. So I think it's a mismatch into your own bubble in which you live and the ground realities, which are dramatically opposite to what you think. I think that's a root cause, the end of history idea, and the permanence of US hegemony, which is behind such statements. Obviously, India rejects the statement. I'm sure Russia and Japan reject it too. We reject it, but we also not only reject that statement, but we reject that mentality, that way of thinking, that you are the hegemonistic power, which gives no space for other. I think they cannot accept India following an independent course of its own. What the Americans want is they want camp followers. They're the leader of the camp and others follow. And that's where the whole Atlantic Alliance is built upon. And if you have countries like Japan, like the European Union, they all fall in line. Whereas in India's case, we respect the Americans, we respect other cultures, but we have a personality of our own. And we have a certain role and a worldview which does not coincide exactly with the way Americans do. So the problem is that they will not accept us as equal partners. And that has been the reason, especially after G20 summit, where India managed to hold its own and did not take a position against Russia, for example, on the Ukraine issue, which the Americans were pressurizing us. We were the ones who were buying Russian oil, and in that way strengthening the Russian economy. And that's only increasing. Despite all the pressures, we have demonstrated more recently that we pursue the concept of our own strategic autonomy and our own role in the future as a civilizational state. And we see that's what's happening. And it has been demonstrated in various ways. Canada is one country which really went after, accusing us of carrying out extrajudicial killings in Canada of Sikh separatists, which are wanting a separate state, a separate country. And the Americans have followed. In fact, you have the Five Eyes, which is the intelligence grouping of white Anglo-Saxon world. I think they have all just come together now against us. And what happened with Canada was reflected soon with the so-called US demand for investigation of another plot to kill a Sikh separatist. So that's where it is. You can see that post G20, there are definite examples now of hostility, let's say, of unease and pressurization of India by the Americans. Because frankly, now they realize that, as the fifth largest economy in the world with a growth rate of about 8%, that we are coming into our own with an independent mindset in the global system. And therefore, we will not be a camp follower, though we may collaborate with the Americans and the Japanese the Australians on supply chains, vaccine development, all non-military areas. But we are not going to be part of a military pact which is geared to contain China. I think they've all realized that, and therefore have come to this conclusion that India is not a part of their camp, and has bolted away from that. And that is being reflected since the World Economic Forum of 2020, where Modi was attacked by George Soros in that forum. I think the rest of the team has followed it up, and now the hostility has peaked after the G20 summit. Let me be realistic. There is a very strong pro-US lobbies working inside India. There is no doubt about it, which want a relationship which is completely tilted towards the United States. Then there are voices of balance that we need to engage with both. So we have people who are not happy with this in the sort of important commercial relations between India and China going to such levels. And I am under no illusions that people of goodwill on both sides will have to come together, because there is a fight ahead to look at things logically and in a national interest and not in an ideological, hostile way. I mean, there are people who get carried away that we are democracies, etc., so we are natural partners. Indian democracy predates Western democracy. It's very different from what they have. And now you see interference in Indian elections coming because we realize that our way of thinking and our lifestyles are different from theirs. And there is a need for more space, for more cultures to come in. The West doesn't like it. There are people who will not receive this news well and will try and scuttle things. China has the two centenary goals. One was 2021, other is 2049. Similarly, we have a goal of 2047 as the benchmark where India becomes a developed country. So this is the vision of this government. If we see the logic and tide of history, I think we are on the right side of history. And I know there are huge obstacles ahead and difficulties, but there is, personally, I sense an optimism in the rise of Asia, the rise of Eurasia. And that's where we will have to be. We have no option but to be together and take this journey, a very, very post-West journey as partners. We must learn to collaborate and make our own rules. The West always talks about rule-based system. Well, of course, we agree rule-based system, but then who makes the rules? And that's important. I'm not saying that we reverse and we dominate the rest of the world, but a fair world which is genuinely rule-based, then the rules come from our traditions and our interests. I think there are going to be various poles in the world, various civilizations coming together, and we need to forge these two rules for its peaceful coexistence and prosperity. And in defining those rules, I think India and China are going to be playing a critical role.